A royal dilemma. Princess Ivara of the crystalline Asturian Empire paced the grand hall of her celestial palace, her shimmering azure gown reflecting the light of twin suns. The message she had dreaded for weeks had finally arrived. The council had confirmed her marriage to a human warrior, Commander Ethan Drake of the Terran Alliance. The humans were a young species, having joined the Galactic Accord only 50 years ago. Yet, in that time, their meteoric rise had disrupted the delicate balance of power. Their unpredictable strategies, adaptability, and fierce determination made them both admired and feared. For Ivara, it was not just their reputation that unsettled her, it was the stories of their chaotic nature, their willingness to break rules to achieve victory. Her trusted advisor, Orcs, stood silently beside her, his crystal eyes glowing with concern. "Your Highness," he began, his voice resonating softly, "the Terran Alliance has proven itself a formidable ally. This union will secure the protection of our empire against the rogue fleets of the Zircons." Ivara stopped mid-step and turned to him, her voice tight. "You ask me to bind myself to a man I have never met. A human. A species that defies every principle of order we hold sacred." Before Orcs could respond, the palace doors opened, and a holographic image of Ethan Drake was projected before them. The human stood tall, his frame lean but muscular, his eyes a piercing gray that seemed to study everything with quiet intensity. Despite the static of the projection, there was something commanding about his presence. "Princess Ivara," his voice, deep and calm, echoed through the hall. "I look forward to our meeting and hope to find common ground between our peoples. Together, we can ensure peace in the galaxy." The transmission ended, leaving Ivara more conflicted than ever. Her people valued precision and order, while humans thrived in chaos. How could she trust a man who embodied everything she feared? The warrior behind the mask. Princess Ivara's sleek star cruiser descended onto the Terran Alliance's central diplomatic station, Luminaris. Its towering silver spires floated against the backdrop of Earth's vibrant blue, a stark contrast to the crystalline beauty of her own world. This was humanity's hub of galactic relations, a place where chaos seemed to meld with purpose. As the ship docked, Ivara's 4 attendants adjusted her ceremonial robes, their reflective silks woven to convey strength and elegance. But no amount of preparation could still the whirlwind of unease coursing through her mind. She straightened her posture, a queenly air masking her inner turmoil. The airlock hissed, and the human delegation stood waiting on the platform. At the center was Commander Ethan Drake, his dark navy uniform immaculate, every medal on his chest gleaming under the station's lights. Ivara's first thought was that he did not look like a fierce warrior. He was leaner than the bulky figures of her own guards and lacked the intimidating aura of a battle-hardened leader. Yet his calm, calculating gaze held an intensity that unsettled her. Ethan stepped forward and bowed slightly, an unexpected gesture of respect. "Princess Ivara," he said with a voice that carried both warmth and authority. "Welcome to Luminaris. I hope the journey was comfortable." Ivara inclined her head, speaking with rehearsed poise. "It was sufficient, Commander. I trust this meeting will clarify the intentions behind our union." Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile, but it wasn't mocking. If anything, it seemed understanding. "I'll do my best to provide clarity, Princess." The delegation escorted them to a private chamber, leaving the two alone for their first conversation. The room was minimalist, almost sterile, a stark difference from the intricate elegance of Ivara's world. She sat across from Ethan, her crystalline eyes scanning him for any sign of weakness or deceit. "Commander Drake," she began, her tone formal. "I have studied your people. Humans are known for their unpredictability, their chaotic strategies. I find it difficult to understand why our council believes a union with your kind is in our best interest." Ethan leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed but alert. "Unpredictability isn't chaos, Princess," he said. "It's adaptation. Humans have survived and thrived because we find opportunity in uncertainty. That's why we're here at this table and not still warring with the Zircons. Ivara frowned. And yet, your methods disrupt the harmony that other species strive to maintain. You break rules, challenge conventions. Rules, Ethan interrupted gently, are useful until they become shackles. Adaptation has allowed us to protect not just our own, but those who depend on us. I imagine that's why your council chose this alliance. His words hung in the air, challenging yet not hostile. For the first time, Ivara hesitated. There was no arrogance in his demeanor, no bravado. He spoke as if he believed every word with unshakable conviction. Before she could respond, an alarm blared through the station. A disembodied voice announced, "Warning, unauthorized vessel detected. Possible Zircon strike." Ethan stood instantly, his calm demeanor shifting into sharp focus. He tapped his communicator. "Drake to command. Status? Zircon stealth frigates," a voice responded. "They've bypassed the outer defenses." Ethan turned to Ivara, his gray eyes sharp and unwavering. "Princess, I need you to follow me. Now." "I do not take orders from humans," she began, but her protest was cut short as the station shuddered under the force of an explosion. Ethan didn't argue. He stepped toward her, his voice firm. "Then consider this advice. If you stay here, you'll die. I intend to keep that from happening." Her pride bristled, but survival instinct won out. Together, they rushed through the corridors, escorted by a squad of Terran soldiers. As they moved, Ethan barked commands into his communicator, coordinating countermeasures against the attack. "Deploy interceptors to Sector 4. Lock down civilian quarters and reroute power to the deflector shields," he ordered. His voice remained calm despite the chaos. Ivara noticed the precision of his movements, the way he seemed to process multiple streams of information simultaneously. Every command was calculated, efficient, yet adaptable to the changing situation. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. They reached an emergency operations room, where holographic displays showed the Zircon ships circling the station. Ethan's eyes scanned the data quickly before he issued another order. "Send a decoy signal to lead them into the asteroid field. Prepare to release the magnetized mines." Ivara's telepathic senses picked up the tension in the room. Every human there looked to Ethan, trusting his plan implicitly. Despite the danger, he exuded a calm confidence that seemed to steady everyone around him. The Zircon ships took the bait, pursuing the decoy signal. As they entered the asteroid field, Ethan activated the mines. In moments, the Zircon vessels were immobilized, their systems disabled by the magnetic interference. The station erupted in cheers, but Ethan didn't celebrate. He immediately began coordinating recovery efforts and ensuring no other threats remained. Ivara watched in stunned silence. This was the man her people feared, the unpredictable human warrior. But what she had seen was not recklessness or chaos. It was adaptability and precision, wielded with a purpose that left no room for ego or error. As the alarms silenced and the station stabilized, Ethan turned to her. "Are you unharmed, Princess?" Her voice faltered for the first time. "I am, unscathed, thanks to your actions." Ethan gave a small nod, his calm demeanor returning. "Good. This alliance may seem strange, Princess, but it's built on a simple truth: together, we are stronger." For the first time, Ivara found herself questioning her assumptions. Humans were not the chaotic force she had imagined. They were something far more complex, and perhaps, far more valuable. Bonds forged in crisis. The station was quiet once more, save for the faint hum of its power systems and the muted murmurs of repair teams. Princess Ivara walked alongside Commander Ethan Drake through the observation deck, the vast expanse of Earth visible through the reinforced glass. The chaos of the Zircon attack had subsided, leaving her thoughts swirling like the stars beyond. "Commander," she began, breaking the silence, your people acted with precision and unity during the crisis. I did not expect such cohesion from a species known for its unpredictability. Ethan glanced at her, his expression calm. Unpredictability doesn't mean disorder, Princess. It means we're willing to change course when the situation demands it. She studied him for a moment. Even your council relies on this? Your leaders permit such deviation from their plans? He smiled faintly. Our leaders understand that adaptability is our greatest strength. Plans are important, but sticking to a plan that no longer fits the situation can be dangerous. That's how we survived back on Earth, through wars, natural disasters, and challenges we couldn't predict. The words hung between them as they stopped at a viewport. Below, Earth rotated serenely, its blue oceans and green continents a stark contrast to the lifeless void surrounding it. Ivara's crystalline eyes narrowed as she considered his explanation. On my world, she said, her tone measured, everything is calculated. Even the growth of our cities is mapped out centuries in advance. To stray from order is seen as reckless. Ethan folded his arms, his gaze distant. And what happens when something unexpected disrupts that order? Her voice tightened. It does not happen. We ensure it does not happen. Ethan turned to face her fully, his gray eyes meeting her crystalline ones. You can't predict everything, Princess. Not in war, and certainly not in life. Chaos doesn't wait for permission. It just happens. Before she could respond, an alert flashed across the nearest console. A technician's voice crackled over the intercom. Commander Drake, we've detected a distress signal from a nearby asteroid mining station. It's under attack. Ethan's expression sharpened. Details? Unknown attackers, sir. They're jamming communications. He turned to Ivara. I'm going to respond to this. You can stay here, where it's safe. Her crystalline skin shimmered faintly, a sign of indignation. I am not some fragile artifact to be locked away. If this alliance is to succeed, I must understand your people better. Ethan studied her for a moment before nodding. All right. But you follow my lead. Agreed? Reluctantly, she nodded. Agreed. The shuttle ride to the asteroid station was tense. Ivara sat across from Ethan, who was reviewing tactical data on a holographic display. The human soldiers aboard the shuttle moved with purpose, checking their weapons and armor. Despite the gravity of the mission, there was an air of calm determination. Ivara leaned closer to Ethan. Your people seem unshaken. Do they not fear what awaits us? Ethan didn't look up. Fear is natural. But we channel it into action. Fear sharpens the mind if you let it. She considered his words, her own fear simmering beneath her calm exterior. On her world, fear was seen as a weakness, something to suppress. Yet here, it seemed to fuel the human's resolve. As the shuttle docked at the mining station, the atmosphere grew tense. The corridors were dimly lit, the faint smell of scorched metal hanging in the air. Ivara followed Ethan closely, her crystalline skin shimmering faintly in the low light. A distant sound echoed through the station, a metallic clang, followed by a faint hiss. The soldiers moved into defensive positions, their weapons raised. Ethan gestured for silence, his hand signaling the team forward. When they reached the control room, they found a group of terrified miners huddled behind overturned crates. One of them, a tall alien with iridescent scales, pointed frantically toward a sealed door. They're through there, he whispered. Heavily armed. They took control of the main reactor. Ethan crouched beside the miner. How many? 10, maybe more. They're demanding access to the station's fuel reserves. Ethan nodded, his mind already working through possibilities. He turned to his team, speaking in a low, firm voice. We can't risk a direct assault. The reactor's unstable. One stray shot, and this whole station goes up. Ivara watched as he mapped out a plan. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, no rigid structure, no predetermined strategy. Instead, Ethan adapted to the situation, weaving possibilities into a cohesive plan. "Princess," he said, turning to her. "Your people are telepathic, right? Can you sense how many are on the other side of that door?" She hesitated, her crystalline skin flickering faintly. "I can try." Closing her eyes, she focused her mind, reaching out with her telepathic senses. It was difficult, human emotions were chaotic, a cacophony of thoughts and feelings. But beyond them, she felt something clearer, determination, anger, and fear. "There are 11, she said finally. "And they're preparing to move." Ethan nodded. "Good work. Now we know what we're dealing with." He turned to his team. "We'll create a distraction to draw them out. Once they're exposed, we take them down with non-lethal force. Minimal damage, minimal risk." The plan unfolded like clockwork. A well-placed sound decoy lured the attackers out, and Ethan's team moved with precision. Within moments, the hostiles were subdued, their weapons disabled. Not a single shot had struck the reactor. Ivara watched in awe as Ethan coordinated every move, his calm demeanor never wavering. This wasn't chaos, it was controlled adaptability, a dance of strategy and instinct. When the last attacker was secured, Ethan turned to Ivara. "See? Unpredictability doesn't mean recklessness." She nodded slowly, her crystalline eyes meeting his. For the first time, she began to understand what made humans so formidable. They thrived not despite chaos, but because of it. And perhaps, she thought, there was something her people could learn from that. Shadows of trust. Back aboard the Terran station, Princess Ivara found herself in a secluded chamber, staring at her own reflection in a polished, obsidian-like surface. The crystalline patterns on her skin shifted with her emotions, an iridescent shimmer of thoughtfulness streaked with faint bands of unease. She had spent her life adhering to strict order, yet the events of the mining station had shaken her beliefs. Commander Ethan Drake's voice echoed in her memory, "Unpredictability doesn't mean recklessness." She had witnessed this truth firsthand, how humans could weave chaos into something precise and effective. Yet a question lingered, could she trust him fully, or was this another calculated facade? The door chimed, breaking her reverie. "Enter," she called, her voice steady. Ethan stepped inside, his posture relaxed but his gaze attentive. "Princess," he greeted, "I thought I'd check on you. You've had a challenging day." Her crystalline eyes narrowed slightly. "Challenging, indeed. Your methods are unlike anything my people understand. They're effective, but they defy the principles of order we hold sacred." Ethan tilted his head thoughtfully. "Order has its place. But when it becomes inflexible, it can become a liability." Ivara folded her arms, studying him. "You speak of adaptability as if it's a virtue. But it relies on unpredictability, something my people have been taught to fear." Ethan crossed the room, stopping by a viewport that overlooked the shimmering expanse of stars. Unpredictability isn't about abandoning order, it's about creating a new one when the old one fails. He glanced at her, his gray eyes steady. "Like now?" She tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. "Explain." "The unexpected meeting." Before he could answer, Ethan's communicator buzzed. He frowned, tapping it. "Drake here." A voice responded. "Commander, a Zircon envoy has arrived. They're requesting an urgent audience." Ivara stiffened. "The Zircons? After what they attempted?" Ethan's frown deepened. "They're claiming the attackers were rogue factions, acting outside their government's control. If they're telling the truth, it could shift the balance of this alliance." He turned to her. "You should join this meeting, Princess. If the Zircons want to mend relations, they'll need to earn your trust as well as ours." Though hesitant, Ivara nodded. "Very well." But if this is another deception, I will not tolerate it. The grand hall where the meeting took place was a stark contrast to the tension in the air. The Zircon envoy, a towering figure with chitinous armor that shimmered like liquid metal, stood flanked by 2 guards. Its compound eyes flickered with unreadable intensity as it addressed the gathered representatives. "We regret the actions of the rogue fleet," the envoy began, its voice resonating through an interpreter device. "They acted against the wishes of the Zircon High Council. We wish to extend an olive branch to the Terran Alliance and the Asterian Empire." Ethan's face remained unreadable, his sharp gaze studying every movement of the envoy. "Words are easy," he said. "Actions speak louder. What assurance can you give us that this won't happen again?" The envoy hesitated, its chitinous plates shifting slightly. "We are prepared to share intelligence on the rogue factions. Their remaining forces and bases of operation." The room fell silent. It was a significant offer, one that could turn the tide against the rogue Zircons. But Ibarra sensed something amiss. The envoy's emotional signature was fragmented, a swirling mix of desperation and apprehension. "Why now?" she asked, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Why offer this intelligence when you could have done so earlier?" The envoy turned its gaze to her, its alien features unreadable. "Because the rogue factions threaten us as much as they threaten you. The Zircon High Council has no desire for prolonged conflict." Ethan glanced at Ibarra, silently acknowledging her insight. "We'll consider your offer," he said carefully. "But if this is a ploy, know that both the Terran Alliance and the Asterian Empire will respond decisively." The envoy nodded, its movements slow and deliberate. "Understood. We will await your decision." An unlikely alliance. After the meeting, Ethan and Ibarra retreated to a secure briefing room. Holographic projections of the Zircon envoy and the intelligence it had provided hovered between them. "What do you think?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Ibarra's crystalline patterns darkened slightly, a sign of contemplation. "They are desperate. That much is clear. But whether their desperation is genuine or a mask for deception, I cannot say." Ethan leaned against the table, his expression thoughtful. "Desperation can make people unpredictable. But it can also make them willing to change." She arched an elegant brow. "You're willing to trust them?" "I'm willing to test them," he corrected. "If their intelligence checks out, it gives us an advantage. If it's a trap, we'll be ready." Ibarra couldn't help but admire his balanced approach. It was a perspective her own people lacked, a willingness to engage with uncertainty rather than shy away from it. "Very well," she said. "Let us test this alliance. But if they betray us, I will ensure they regret it." Ethan's faint smile returned. "I wouldn't expect anything less, Princess." As the stars outside shifted and the station continued its silent vigil, Ibarra found herself wondering if her people's rigid adherence to order had left them blind to a deeper truth. Perhaps there was strength in uncertainty, a power that humans had mastered not out of choice, but necessity. And perhaps, she thought, there was more to learn from Ethan Drake than she had ever imagined. The test of trust. The intelligence provided by the Zircon envoy was as detailed as it was alarming. Holographic maps of the rogue faction's operations flickered in the dim light of the Terran station's war room. Ethan Drake and Princess Ibarra stood side by side, their eyes scanning the data. The rogue Zircons weren't just a scattered threat, they were a shadowy network spanning multiple systems, their reach more extensive than anyone had realized. "This is either the greatest gift we've ever received," Ethan murmured, "or the most elaborate trap ever set." Ibarra's crystalline skin shimmered faintly, her emotions rippling across its surface. "And yet you plan to act on it." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "If it's true, we can dismantle their operations before they strike again. If it's a trap, better we spring it on our terms." She turned to him, her crystalline eyes narrowing. "And you intend to lead this mission yourself?" "Of course," he said simply, as if the answer was obvious. Leadership means being at the front when it counts. Into the abyss. A combined task force of Terran and Asturian ships set out toward the Zircon-controlled sector. Ivara found herself aboard Ethan's command vessel, the Resolute, a stark contrast to the crystalline elegance of her own ships. The Terran vessel was efficient, its design focused on function over form. Yet, there was an undeniable beauty in its simplicity, a reflection of the humans who built it. As they approached their destination, a desolate asteroid belt rumored to house a rogue Zircon base, tension filled the air. The crew worked with quiet determination, their movements precise but adaptable. Ivara couldn't help but notice how even the smallest decisions were made with consultation, every voice considered. It was a stark difference from her own people's rigid hierarchies. Ethan stood at the center of the bridge, his gray eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Status report," he called out. "Scanners picking up faint energy signatures," a technician replied. "Could be the base. Or could be bait." Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. "Maintain stealth protocols. We'll confirm visually before making any moves." Ivara watched him, her respect for his leadership growing with every passing moment. He commanded not through fear, but through trust, his team willing to follow him into the unknown without hesitation. The Rogue's Gambit. The base came into view, nestled within the shadow of a massive asteroid. It was a sprawling structure, its spiked architecture unmistakably Zircon. The task force maintained a cautious distance as scouts were dispatched to gather more information. "This feels too easy," Ivara said quietly, her crystalline skin darkening with suspicion. "Why would they leave their operation so exposed?" Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "They wouldn't. But we can't afford to ignore this." The scouts returned with their findings. The base was operational, its defenses active but not overwhelming. It seemed the rogue Zircons had grown overconfident, or so they wanted their enemies to believe. Ethan turned to Ivara. "We'll move in with a surgical strike. Minimal engagement, maximum disruption. If it's a trap, we'll adapt." She hesitated. "And if we're outmatched?" His faint smile returned. "Then we'll find a way to match them." A battle of wills. The task force advanced, their ships weaving through the asteroid field with practiced precision. The base's defenses activated as expected, firing energy beams and deploying automated drones. But Ethan's fleet was ready, their maneuvers unpredictable and coordinated. Ivara observed in awe as the humans executed their strategy. Ethan's commands were sharp but flexible, adjusting to every shift in the battle. Where her people would have relied on predetermined tactics, the Terrans adapted in real time, turning disadvantages into opportunities. Despite the overwhelming odds, the task force breached the base's outer defenses. Boarding teams, a mix of Terran soldiers and Asturian guards, infiltrated the structure, their mission to disable the base's operations and extract valuable intelligence. Ivara insisted on joining the boarding team. "If I am to understand your people, I must see how you fight." Ethan didn't argue. "Stay close, and follow my lead." Inside the base, the air was thick with tension. The corridors were narrow and dimly lit, every shadow a potential threat. The team moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready. As they reached the central command chamber, the trap sprung. Zircon warriors emerged from hidden alcoves, their weapons blazing. Chaos erupted, but Ethan's team responded with practiced precision. The humans didn't panic, they adapted, using the environment to their advantage. Ivara fought alongside them, her crystalline staff glowing with Asturian energy. She was a skilled combatant, her movements graceful and calculated. But what struck her most was how the humans fought, not as individuals, but as a seamless unit, each action supporting the others. Ethan was at the center of it all, his presence a steadying force. He moved with fluid precision, every action purposeful. Even in the chaos, he found moments to give orders, ensuring his team remained coordinated. The battle was fierce, but the humans' adaptability won out. The Zircon warriors were overwhelmed, their trap turned against them. A lesson in strength. With the base secured, the team began extracting data from the Zircon systems. Ivara stood beside Ethan, her crystalline skin shimmering faintly as she caught her breath. "You turned their trap into your victory," she said, her tone equal parts admiration and disbelief. Ethan smiled faintly. "That's what we do. Chaos isn't the enemy, it's a tool. You just have to know how to use it." She studied him for a moment, her respect deepening. "My people would never have survived this. We rely too heavily on structure and predictability. Perhaps there is more to learn from your ways than I realized." He met her gaze, his expression sincere. "And perhaps we have more to learn from yours. Order and adaptability aren't enemies, Princess. Together, they're stronger." As they returned to the Resolute, Ivara felt a shift within herself. The rigid beliefs of her upbringing were beginning to give way to a new understanding. Humanity's strength wasn't just in their adaptability, it was in their willingness to embrace the unknown. And for the first time, she wondered if this unlikely alliance might hold the key to something far greater than either of their peoples could achieve alone. The fractured truth. Back aboard the Resolute, the mood was tense. The Zircon base's capture had provided valuable intelligence, but it came with a revelation that left both the Terran and Asturian delegations on edge. The rogue faction wasn't acting alone. Evidence pointed to a shadowy coalition of species, some of whom were nominal allies within the Galactic Accord. In the command chamber, a holographic display projected the data recovered from the base. Ethan Drake leaned forward, studying the web of connections linking the rogue Zircons to other factions. Princess Ivara stood beside him, her crystalline skin flickering with uneasy light. "This changes everything," she said quietly. "If these records are accurate, this coalition has been orchestrating chaos across the galaxy for years." Ethan nodded, his gray eyes narrowing. "They're not just destabilizing governments, they're positioning themselves for dominance. And they've been using the Zircons as a smokescreen." One of the Terran analysts spoke up, her voice tinged with urgency. "Commander, the data suggests their next target is the Sorinth trade hub. If they succeed, they'll cut off vital resources for half the Accord." Ivara frowned. "The Sorinth trade hub is heavily defended. No one would dare attack it directly." "They don't need to," Ethan replied. "This coalition thrives on subversion. They'll exploit weaknesses, turn allies against each other, and create the chaos they need to seize control. Unlikely partners." As plans were made to intercept the coalition's next move, Ethan called for a meeting with Ivara in his private quarters. The room was modest, with only a small viewport offering a view of the distant stars. Ivara had expected something more ostentatious from a human war hero, but the simplicity of the space mirrored Ethan's practical nature. "Why have you summoned me?" she asked, her tone guarded. Ethan gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing. He sighed, leaning against the edge of his desk. "Because we need to be honest with each other if this alliance is going to work." Ivara tilted her head, her crystalline eyes narrowing. "You doubt my sincerity?" "It's not that," he said carefully. "It's that we come from such different worlds. Your people value order and precision, while mine thrive in uncertainty. If we're going to stop this coalition, we need to understand each other better." She regarded him for a moment, her shimmering patterns shifting as she considered his words. "Very well. What do you wish to know?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Everything. Start with why your people fear unpredictability so much." Ivara hesitated, then began. "Long ago, before the Asturian Empire rose, our world was plagued by chaos. Wars between factions nearly destroyed us. Order was the only thing that saved us. Every decision we make is guided by meticulous calculation. To deviate from that order risks returning to the darkness of our past. Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. And now that order is your strength, and your weakness. Her crystalline patterns darkened slightly. Weakness? Rigid systems can be exploited, he explained. This coalition. They're counting on the fact that you won't adapt quickly enough to stop them. The word stung, but she couldn't deny their truth. And you? What is it that makes humans so willing to embrace chaos? Ethan's gaze turned distant. Because we had no choice. Earth was never easy on us, natural disasters, resource scarcity, conflicts over what little we had. We learned to adapt because the alternative was extinction. A dangerous proposal. Their conversation was interrupted by a message from the bridge. The coalition's activity near the Sorinth trade hub had intensified. Ships bearing forged credentials were slipping past its defenses, setting the stage for an attack from within. Ethan turned to Ivara. We need to act fast. But if we're going to succeed, we'll have to do something your people might find unorthodox. Her crystalline patterns shimmered with suspicion. What do you mean? He activated a holographic map of the trade hub, pointing to the key access points. We need to infiltrate the hub before the coalition's forces strike. If we can gather evidence of their plans, we'll expose them before they can act. Infiltrate, she repeated, her tone sharp. You mean deception? Call it what you want, he said, his voice calm but firm. But it's the best way to stop them. If we wait for them to attack, it'll be too late. Ivara's crystalline skin flickered with a mix of colors, frustration, doubt, and a trace of intrigue. My people do not condone deception. But I will defer to your judgment. For now. Behind enemy lines. Disguised as merchants, Ethan, Ivara, and a small team entered the bustling Sorinth trade hub. The station was a sprawling metropolis, its corridors filled with beings from every corner of the galaxy. To Ivara, the chaos was overwhelming, no clear order, no defined structure. Yet Ethan moved through it effortlessly, blending into the crowd with a practiced ease. Stay close, he murmured as they approached the central data core. This place is crawling with coalition agents. Ivara followed, her senses heightened. She could feel the undercurrent of tension in the station, a mix of fear and anticipation. It was unlike anything she had experienced on her meticulously ordered world. As they reached the data core, Ethan's team worked quickly to bypass its security. But just as they began extracting information, a group of coalition agents appeared, their weapons drawn. Ivara's crystalline skin darkened as she prepared to fight, but Ethan held up a hand. Not yet, he whispered. Let them come closer. The agents advanced, their leader barking orders. Just as they reached the team, Ethan sprang into action. With a fluid motion, he disarmed the leader, using their weapon to disable another agent. His team followed suit, their movements precise and efficient. Ivara fought alongside them, her crystalline staff glowing with Asterian energy. Together, they subdued the agents without firing a single lethal shot. A new understanding. With the coalition agents secured and their plans exposed, Ethan and Ivara returned to the Resolute. The data they had gathered would dismantle the coalition's operation at the trade hub, buying the Galactic Accord precious time. As they stood in the command chamber, Ivara turned to Ethan. You were right. Chaos can be used as a tool. But it is a tool my people are unaccustomed to wielding. Ethan met her gaze, his expression steady. Then maybe it's time we teach each other. Your order and our adaptability, together, they're unstoppable. She nodded slowly, her crystalline patterns shifting to a faint, hopeful glow. For the first time, she began to see the potential of their alliance, not just as a necessity, but as a strength that could reshape the galaxy. The Unbreakable Alliance. The Galactic Accord Council Chamber was a marvel of architecture, its domed ceiling an ever-shifting mosaic of the stars and planets united under its banner. Delegates from dozens of species filled the amphitheater, their voices a low murmur as they awaited the session's start. At the center of the chamber, Princess Ivara and Commander Ethan Drake stood side by side, their presence a symbol of unity between two very different worlds. The intelligence they had uncovered had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Coalition's intricate web of subversion, betrayal, and manipulation had been laid bare. Now, the Council had gathered to decide how to respond, and whether the Human-Asterian Alliance would lead the charge. A tenuous beginning. As the Council session began, the murmurs subsided. The Ziricon envoy, its towering form casting long shadows under the chamber's light, was the first to speak. "The Coalition's treachery threatens all of us," it said, its voice resonating through the hall. "But trusting the Terrans and Asterians to lead this counteroffensive is unorthodox." Ivara stepped forward, her crystalline skin glowing with calm authority. "Unorthodox, yes," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her royal heritage. "But effective. Together, we uncovered the Coalition's plans. Together, we dismantled their operation at the Sorinth trade hub. This alliance is proof that unity, even among the most different of species, is our greatest strength." A murmur rippled through the chamber, some delegates nodding in agreement while others exchanged skeptical glances. Ivara could feel the tension, the weight of centuries-old rivalries and distrust. Ethan stepped forward next, his calm demeanor unwavering. "The Coalition thrives on division," he said. "They exploit our weaknesses by turning us against each other. If we keep clinging to old fears and prejudices, we're handing them victory." The room fell silent. His words, simple yet powerful, resonated with those who had seen firsthand the destruction the Coalition had wrought. The final threat. Before the Council could deliberate further, an emergency alert echoed through the chamber. A holographic projection of a Terran officer appeared, her face pale with urgency. "The Coalition has launched an assault on the Accord Central Fleet yards. They're targeting our shipbuilding capabilities." Gasps filled the room. The fleet yards were the backbone of the Accord's defense, and losing them would cripple the galaxy's ability to respond to future threats. Ethan turned to Ivara, his expression sharp. "We need to act now. The Council can debate later." She nodded, her crystalline patterns flashing with resolve. "Agreed. The Alliance fleet will lead the charge." Together, they left the chamber, their determination mirrored by the soldiers and officers who rallied around them. A galaxy at war. The Allied fleet emerged from hyperspace near the fleet yards, the vast expanse of the orbital docks already ablaze with battle. Coalition warships, sleek and deadly, swarmed the station, their weapons tearing through its defenses. The Alliance fleet, a mix of Terran and Asterian ships, moved into position, their formations blending discipline and adaptability. Ethan stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his voice steady as he issued commands. "Focus fire on their command ships. Disrupt their coordination." Ivara, aboard her crystalline flagship, used her telepathic abilities to relay vital information to her fleet. "Their right flank is vulnerable. Exploit it and cut off their retreat." The combined strategies of their people turned the tide of the battle. The Asterian ships, precise and methodical, provided a steady backbone, while the Terran vessels used daring maneuvers to outflank the enemy. As the battle raged on, a massive Coalition dreadnought emerged from the shadows, its colossal form dwarfing even the largest Alliance ships. Its weapons tore through the Allied fleet, threatening to turn the battle. "We need to disable that dreadnought," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "If it's not stopped, this battle is over. A sacrifice for victory." Ethan and Ivara made the bold decision to lead a joint strike team aboard the dreadnought. The mission was perilous, but the stakes left no room for hesitation. Together with a mix of Terran Marines and Asterian guards, they boarded the enemy ship under heavy fire. Inside, the corridors were a maze of metallic darkness, filled with Coalition soldiers. The strike team fought their way toward the ship's core, their movements a blend of human adaptability and Asterian precision.